Hello, today we are going to begin decimals. Now you guys have been working hard representing fractions with denominators of 10 or 100. So you've been working and dealing with tenths and hundredths, and you've been representing them as fractions, but today we're going to also focus on representing those same numbers but as decimals. So first, you're going to see a picture like this. And this picture right over here represents a piece of a whole. My entire square is my one full piece. But notice we want to represent just the shaded region, which is a piece of my whole, which means I'm having something less than 1. So you can represent that as a fraction, which is what you have been working on, but you can also represent this as a decimal. Now, the first thing we want to do is determine how many total pieces I have. So let's count how many pieces I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So my denominator here would actually be 10 because I have 10 equal pieces creating my whole. Now I want to determine the part that is shaded. So I'm going to count how many shaded pieces I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So to represent this picture of the shaded region, I could represent this using the fraction 6/10. But I can also represent this using a decimal point. Now I'm going to put my decimal point right over here. To the left of my decimal point represents all my whole numbers, how many whole pieces I have. But here I don't have a full piece. So I'm going to write 0 in front of my decimal point, representing I have no whole amounts. To the right of my decimal point goes my pieces of my whole. So here I have 6 pieces of the whole, and we have 10 equal pieces. So my first digit right after the decimal point is going to represent my tenths place. Let's try to spell out tenths for you so you could see this. So here's going to represent my tenths place. So the digit in my tenths place would be a 6. Now this fraction says 6/10, but so does this decimal says 6/10 as well. Now notice you keep hearing that THS. That THS, when you hear that, represents you have a piece of a whole. And it is important to recognize that now you're not dealing with just the number 6. You're dealing with 6/10. And you're including that label of tenths to represent that you have a piece of my whole. Now we're going to move on to this problem right over here. Notice something a little bit different from this problem. There's no longer 10 pieces. In fact, you might see 10 vertical lines, but I also see 10 horizontal lines, creating 100 equal pieces. So now we're no longer dealing with tenths, we're dealing with hundredths, which means now I'm no longer just having one digit after my decimal point, I'm going to have 2. So we have tenths, then I have hundredths. But now I need to determine what is the shaded region. So you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or you might recognize you could start counting by tens, 10, 20, except I don't have a full one right here, so I'm going to leave off at 10 and then count 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So now I have 16 hundredths, which would be the same as 16 hundredths. Now the digit in my tenths place is a 1, and the digit in my hundredths place is a 6, giving me an answer of 16 hundredths. Now you could choose to represent this picture either way. If they ask for fraction notation, you represent it like this. If they ask for decimal notation, you represent it like this. They are both correct answers. Now we're going to continue practicing a few more. For this one here, again, we're looking at the picture and we see that we have 10 equal pieces. That's telling me that my denominator is going to be 10. But now I need to find my numerator based off of how much I shaded in. So if I count all the shaded pieces, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. giving me 9/10. Now again, I can represent this 9/10 as a decimal as well. I have one digit right after my decimal point, which will be a 9, representing 9/10 as well. Notice the first digit to the right of my decimal point is representing a digit in the tenths place, which we have 9/10 is the value, giving me a digit of 9. Now we're going to move on to this one here. Looking at this picture, I no longer have tens. In fact, I have hundredths because notice there's 100 boxes, 100 equal pieces in this drawing. So now I'm going to count how much is going to represent my shaded region. Now in this problem here, I can start by counting by tens because if I was to count by ones, I'm going to be counting for a while. So I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88. So I have 88 hundredths, which since I hear hundredths, that means I'm going to have 2 digits after my decimal point. Now I like drawing these lines here just to make sure I know that I'm going to have a digit in my tenths and a digit in my hundredths. And it's always important to make sure that those places are always filled with a digit, even if it's a 0. So here I'm going to have 88 hundredths. Now again, this is 88 hundredths, and so is this. Now for my last problem is going to be a little different than the others that we had. But the first thing I want you all to notice is that we have 100 equal pieces in this whole. But again, notice it's not fully shaded, so we're going to represent this as a decimal and a fraction. And this is showing me I have a piece of a whole. So my denominator here is 100 because I have 100 equal pieces in this whole. Now I want to determine what is the shaded region. So I'm going to count how many boxes I have shaded in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I have 6 hundredths, but I hear hundredths. That's telling me I will have 2 digits after the decimal point. So I'm going to draw these lines to represent my tenths and my hundredths, which means I will definitely have 2 digits after my decimal point to fill the tenths and the hundredth spots. But 6 hundredths is telling me that the value in my hundredths place would be 6 hundredths. Therefore, the digit in my hundredths place is a 6. But the problem is I cannot leave my answer like this. I can't leave the tenths place empty. So to fill that gap, I'm going to just write a 0 in my tenths place because I don't have a value in my tenths place. I only have a value in my hundredths place. So you still need to represent that when you are writing your answer. So as you are completing the work today, please be mindful specifically of this problem. I highly recommend you go back and refer back to this problem because this is one of the most common mistakes is where people make mistakes here and forgetting about the tenths place or missing a piece when you are representing these pictures as decimals and fractions. So throughout today's activity, if you ever need to refer back to this video, you can also go back to my YouTube channel and watch this video at any time.